My child, stop for a moment and come closer, because what I am about to say is not for the crowd, not for wandering ears, not for those who only listen halfway and then walk away without understanding the weight of what is being spoken. This moment is not public. It is not open to every voice. It is not meant to be carried into noise. I have drawn you here because I wanted this moment separated, guarded, untouched by distraction, untouched by opinion, untouched by the many voices that have surrounded your heart until even your own thoughts have become tired from carrying too much sound. Right now I am asking you to hear me as though nothing else exists around you, because in this moment I have intentionally closed out what usually competes for your attention. I did not bring you here for ordinary comfort. I did not call you into this pause for passing words. I called you because there are things I must say directly into your spirit, and they were never meant to be heard through the interference of other people's expectations. This is sacred because I am speaking to the place in you that still trembles when no one sees it, the place that asks questions quietly when your outward face appears calm, the place that carries thoughts you have never fully spoken aloud. I know how often you have continued through your days while something inside you remained unfinished, still waiting, still wondering, still carrying weight without language. That is why I stop you now. This is not random. This is not accidental. I wanted you separated from everything else for this conversation because some words lose their power when the noise around you remains louder than my voice. Many voices have spoken into your life, my child. Some voices came from people who cared but did not understand your season. Some voices came from fear dressed like wisdom. Some voices came from old memories that still echo when silence falls. Some voices came from disappointments that taught your heart to expect less than what I intended. Some voices came from past pain repeating itself until you almost believed it deserved authority over your future. I have watched how crowded your inner world has become. Even when you sit quietly, your thoughts often carry voices from many places: what others said, what you fear may happen, what did not happen before, what might go wrong if you trust again, what your own mind repeats when answers delay. But now hear me clearly. I have shut out every outside voice in this hour because only my voice must remain strong enough for you to hear what matters now. I am not competing with noise today. I am removing it. I am not asking your attention while every other thought continues speaking loudly. I am calling you into a sacred stillness where my words can reach the deepest place without interruption. That is why something inside you feels this weight right now, because your spirit recognizes when my voice is pressing past the clutter. You do not need more opinions in this hour. You do not need another human conclusion about what your life means. You do not need another borrowed explanation for what only I fully understand. You need my voice, because my voice knows what began before others noticed, what changed before you recognized it, and what is already moving where your eyes cannot yet fully see. A door has already been closed, my child, and I know you have looked at that closed place many times, wondering why it would not open again, wondering why what once seemed possible suddenly became unreachable, wondering why something that looked near became sealed before your hands could hold it the way you imagined. But listen carefully. That door was not closed as punishment. I did not close it to wound you. I did not shut it because I wanted loss to define this season. I closed it because something too sacred is happening behind that closed place for noise, confusion, and unfinished understanding to keep entering freely. You saw a closed door and thought perhaps something had ended because you lacked what was needed. But I saw what that open space would have allowed too soon, and I chose closure because protection often looks painful before it looks merciful. There are things I will not allow into your life while they still carry the power to disturb what I am quietly shaping behind what appears shut. You may think the closed door means absence, but often closed doors are where unseen preparation deepens without interruption. I close what would have distracted you from what needs to mature unseen. I close what others call opportunity when I know it would have mixed too much noise into what I am forming with precision. You have looked at that door as though silence behind it meant emptiness, but silence behind certain doors often means sacred work is happening where human timing cannot interfere. So do not leave this moment unfinished, my child, because what I speak near the end answers what you have asked me in silence. I say this because I know how quickly distraction reaches for you when something begins touching deeper places. I know how often your attention shifts when your spirit feels confronted by truth it has tried to delay facing. But not now. Stay here. Let these words remain with you until they settle fully, because there is something tied to this hour that your heart has been asking without always knowing how to form it into prayer. Some questions you never spoke clearly, yet I heard them. Some nights you did not even use words, yet I understood exactly what your silence carried. What I am speaking now reaches into those places. If you leave too quickly, you may miss the very sentence your spirit has waited to hear. This is why I drew you into a private moment, because the answer cannot arrive as noise among noise. It must land where your attention is surrendered enough to receive it. Come in Jesus, you never failed me if his faithfulness amazes you still. Others may think that the closed door means loss, my child. They may look at what did not continue and assume something important was taken from you. They may interpret your quiet season as emptiness, your separation as failure, your distance as evidence that something good slipped away. Even you have wondered that at times. You have looked at what closed and asked whether you missed something, whether something could have remained open if you had moved differently, spoken sooner, understood faster. But heaven knows what that closed door truly means. Heaven knows it was protection. Heaven knows what you were kept from, what confusion was prevented, what unseen burden was stopped before it reached deeper into your path. Protection rarely announces itself with immediate comfort. Often at first feels like disappointment because what was blocked looked desirable through human sight. But what appears desirable is not always safe for where I am leading you. I closed what others might call loss because I knew what would have entered if it remained open. I know what your future requires, and I will not allow every open path simply because it looks possible. Some doors close because what stands behind them belongs to an earlier version of you that cannot walk with you further. Come closer now, my child, because this conversation was never meant for the crowd. It was never meant for opinions, never meant for those who do not understand what you have cried about in private, never meant for those who only see your outward life and think they understand your hidden battles. There are tears you never explained. There are fears you hid beneath ordinary conversation. There are moments you smiled while carrying questions too heavy to place into common words. Others may know pieces of your story, but they do not know what your soul has whispered when no one remained near enough to hear it. I know those hidden moments. I know the exact tone of your quietest pain. I know how often you have tried to stay composed while inwardly asking if I still saw what no one else noticed. This is why I wanted you apart from the crowd. Sacred words lose clarity when too many opinions surround them. What I say now belongs in the private space between my heart and yours, because only there can it reach the depth where healing and direction meet. And I tell you now with urgency, what I am about to say cannot wait because delay already touches something moving unseen. You think perhaps nothing urgent is happening because your eyes do not yet see dramatic change. but unseen movement has already begun around matters you have prayed over. Timing is already moving in places you cannot measure. There are moments when heaven begins arranging before earth reveals. There are shifts already taking place around decisions, around answers, around the very places where you assumed stillness remained complete. Delay matters now because what has begun unseen requires your spirit awake enough to answer when clarity reaches you. That is why I called you now, why I closed out noise, why I shut the door, why I pulled you near before the next step becomes visible. I am not speaking because I enjoy suspense. I am speaking because what moves quietly now must meet a heart that is listening when the moment arrives. You are closer than you think to understanding why certain things closed, why silence deepened, why I separated this hour from every other voice. Stay near, my child, because this sacred moment is not empty. What feels still is already carrying movement, and what I am saying now belongs to what is already beginning. My child, I need you to understand with complete clarity that the door you saw closed did not close by accident, and it did not close because something escaped my attention. It did not happen because I arrived too late, nor because I failed to notice what you were hoping would remain open. The door closed because I close it. I close it deliberately, with full knowledge of what was behind it, what was around it, what would have entered through it, and what would have been touched if it had remained open any longer. You may have looked at that moment and thought something slipped away beyond your control, something ended before you were ready, something moved beyond reach before you could understand why it had to happen that way. But hear me now. What closed in front of you was not random loss. It was deliberate protection shaped by my hand before your mind even understood the danger of what remained open too long. I do not close doors carelessly. I do not remove access without purpose. When I close something, I do so because I see further than your current pain allows you to see. I know what continues if I leave certain things open. I know what enters quietly through doors that seem harmless at first. I know what weakens your spirit when too much remains available simply because your heart still hopes something there might yet become what it was never meant to become. That is why the door closed with such finality, because hesitation would have kept trying to return to what I had already decided must end. Please support our channel. Our work is to bring happiness in your life and devotion to God. And if you want, you can donate to us via given link in description or pinned comment to show your support. Some access had to end, my child, because too many voices were weakening your discernment. This was not only about one person, one place, one moment, or one visible circumstance. It was about what constant access had begun doing inside you. Too many voices were reaching you at once. Too many thoughts were entering your spirit from places that sounded convincing but were not carrying peace. Too many words were shaping your reactions before my voice had time to settle deeply enough to guide you. Some voices did not come with cruelty. Some came wrapped in care, wrapped in advice, wrapped in familiarity, wrapped in patterns you had known so long that you no longer noticed how much they shaped your inner responses. But even familiar voices can weaken discernment when they remain louder than the quiet instruction I am trying to establish within you. Every repeated opinion, every emotional influence, every outside expectation, every old memory replaying itself, every fear disguised as caution, all of it began crowding the space where discernment needs stillness in order to become clear. Discernment does not grow strong in crowded noise. It grows where unnecessary voices lose their authority. I closed access because you were reaching the point where too much sound would have made my direction difficult for you to trust. You thought something was taken away, and I know that feeling was painful because when something closes unexpectedly, the heart immediately measures what seems lost before it understands what is being preserved. You looked at the closed place and felt absence before you felt peace. You measured what no longer remained available and wondered why I allowed that emptiness to form. You may have even asked whether something valuable had been removed before its time, whether perhaps if things had unfolded differently you could have held on longer, explained more, waited differently, or protected what mattered in another way. But heaven was not removing value from you. Heaven was creating sacred privacy around something too important to remain exposed. Sacred privacy often looks like loss when viewed only through emotion, because what is hidden cannot yet explain itself. Yet there are seasons when I must draw a boundary around your life that even you do not immediately understand, because what I am preserving cannot grow properly while every voice still has easy access to your attention. What you felt as taken away was often my hand reducing what no longer had permission to stand too close while deeper things were forming. The closed door created privacy because unfinished healing needed room that noise could not enter. You had wounds still speaking beneath your outward strength, and not every wound heals where constant interruption remains. Some healing cannot happen where old conversations keep reopening what I am trying to settle. Some healing cannot deepen where repeated access allows the same emotional patterns to continue touching places already tired from carrying too much. I know you believed you could continue as you were and still heal at the same time, but some healing demands boundaries strong enough to stop what repeatedly reaches the same tender place. I closed what remained too near because unfinished healing required space where your heart could breathe without immediately defending itself, explaining itself, or adjusting itself again to what had already pressed against you too long. Healing often begins quietly, and that quietness is fragile in early stages. That is why sacred privacy had to form before deeper restoration could settle in you. The closed door also protected hidden preparation, because I was doing work inside you that could not be shaped properly while too much access remained open. There are things I prepare in hidden ways long before they become visible enough for others to understand. Preparation often looks like stillness because what is changing first happens within. I was adjusting your inner responses. I was loosening old dependencies. I was teaching your spirit how to remain steady without constant reassurance from outside sources. I was strengthening your ability to hear me without needing immediate confirmation from every surrounding voice. But hidden preparation requires protected space. If too many voices remain near while preparation is unfinished, what I am building can become mixed with confusion before it matures. That is why the closed door was not merely about stopping something external. It was about creating an atmosphere where what I was preparing could deepen without interruption. And divine instruction needed that same protected space, my child, because what I needed to say could not compete forever with the voices you had learned to carry. Divine instruction often comes quietly before it becomes obvious. It does not always arrive in dramatic ways. Sometimes it comes as repeated inner clarity, a thought returning with unusual weight, a quiet knowing that persists even when your emotions still hesitate. But when too many voices continue speaking, divine instruction can feel uncertain simply because other sounds keep pressing against it. I closed access because I wanted my instruction to reach you without constant interference. What I need to establish in you now requires clearer hearing than before. There are things ahead that cannot be entered wisely if discernment remains weak from constant outside influence. So I reduced access not to isolate you in cruelty, but to let my voice settle where it had too often been interrupted. You may still look at the closed door and wonder why it had to happen in that exact way, why certain things ended so sharply, why the silence after closure sometimes felt heavier than expected. But understand this, Deliberate closure often feels sharp because hesitation would have kept reopening what needed final distance. If I had left the door partly open, your heart might have remained half-turned toward what I already knew could not continue safely. Sometimes complete closure is mercy because partial closure only extends confusion. I know how human hearts search for one more explanation, one more opening, one more sign that perhaps what closed could still return in the old form. But what I close deliberately is often because I know the old form cannot carry what is next. Sacred privacy is not punishment, my child. It is one of the deepest forms of care when your spirit stands at a place where healing, preparation, and instruction must happen together. The crowd cannot always stand near what I am doing intimately. Not every voice deserves access while I speak deeply. Not every influence belongs near your unfinished places. Not every open door is kindness simply because it allows entry. Some doors close because what remains inside must become strong enough before any new opening can be trusted. So when you remember that closed door, do not call it abandonment. Do not call it forgotten desire. Do not call it meaningless loss. Call it what it truly was. My deliberate hand creating sacred privacy because too many voices had already touched what needed quiet. Too many influences had weakened discernment, and too much remained unfinished for the door to stay open any longer. I closed it because I saw what you could not yet see, and because what I am protecting in you now is worth far more than what seemed to leave that door shut. My child, there was a reason I allowed the noise around you to stop, and I need you to understand that this silence you have felt was not empty, not random, and not a sign that I stepped away from you. It was arranged because too much sound had gathered around your heart, and what was surrounding you had slowly become louder than what I was trying to place within you. I watched how many voices reached you each day, how every opinion, every fear, every remembered pain, every repeated thought, every outside word began pressing against your peace until your spirit grew tired without always knowing why. You thought your struggle was only emotional heaviness, but often what you were carrying was the weight of too many voices trying to occupy the same inner space at once. There were voices from people who spoke with certainty, but did not know what I was doing inside you. There were voices from old memories that returned each time something new began to form, reminding you of former disappointments as if your future must obey your past. There were voices of regret that replayed moments you wished had gone differently, convincing you that what once happened should still define what happens now. There were voices of fear that arrived quietly, sounding wise, sounding careful, sounding almost protective, while slowly weakening your ability to trust what I had already whispered. And beneath all of that, my voice remained present, but you were struggling to hear me clearly because the noise had become constant. Type thank you, Lord, for your great love if He's poured blessings on your life. That constant noise did not always sound dramatic. Sometimes it came through ordinary conversations that lingered too long in your mind after they ended. Sometimes it came through simple words others spoke without understanding how deeply you would carry them. Sometimes one sentence from another person became heavier inside you than it should have, because your spirit was already tired and vulnerable. You would hear advice, suggestions, warnings, interpretations, and even kindness. Yet after all of it you still felt uncertain because none of those voices reached the place only my voice can settle. You kept trying to gather clarity from what surrounded you, but clarity does not grow stronger when every outside voice becomes equal in weight. Many voices speak from their own fears, their own limits, their own unfinished understanding. Even those who care about you often speak from what they know naturally, not from what I alone see completely. I watched how you tried to make sense of your season by listening to many directions at once, hoping that somewhere inside all that sound one answer would become obvious. But the more voices you carried, the more your discernment weakened, because discernment cannot remain sharp when the heart keeps giving equal attention to what should never have equal authority. Fear also became part of the noise, my child, and fear often speaks with such familiarity that many do not immediately recognize it as noise at all. Fear does not always shout. Often it whispers in reasonable tones. It tells you to wait because moving might hurt again. It tells you to stay where things feel controlled because uncertainty could wound you. It tells you to expect little because expecting much once brought disappointment. It tells you that caution is wisdom even when caution is slowly becoming another form of delay. Fear learned how to repeat itself through your own thoughts until some of its words sounded like your own conclusions. That is why I had to reduce what surrounded you, because fear had learned to use every quiet moment to repeat old warnings until your heart almost accepted them as truth. But fear cannot guide what I am building in you now. Fear only studies danger. My voice reveals direction. Memory also became noise. Not every memory is harmful, but some memories stayed too active in your present. Certain old moments kept returning whenever something new approached. You remembered what failed before, what hurt before, what changed suddenly before, what words wounded you before, what doors closed before. And without noticing it, those memories began speaking into moments that were not the same. Memory kept comparing what is now to what once happened, and comparison began stealing fresh hearing. You would face something new, yet old pain would speak first. You would sense my movement, yet former disappointment would ask whether this too would become another wound. Memory became loud because unresolved pain always tries to protect itself by predicting repetition. But not everything ahead must answer to what happened behind you. I had to quiet the noise because memory cannot be allowed to rule every new instruction I give you. Regret also spoke more than you realized. There were things you wished you had said differently, moments you wished you had understood sooner, decisions you replayed in private, wondering whether another choice would have changed everything. Regret has a way of revisiting the same places until it convinces the heart that looking backward long enough might somehow repair what already passed. But regret rarely heals what it keeps repeating. Instead, it fills the mind with yesterday until today loses strength. You carried some regret quietly, and because you carried it quietly, it often became stronger than you admitted. It would return when silence came, asking whether certain closed doors would still be open if you had moved sooner, trusted differently, spoken less, spoken more, stayed longer, left earlier. Yet I tell you now, regret was part of the noise because regret often asks questions without offering peace. My voice corrects, but my voice does not trap you inside endless backward thinking. Outside advice added another layer of sound because many voices around you spoke with confidence while lacking the full picture of what I am doing. Some told you what they believed you should do. Some offered conclusions shaped by their own lives. Some interpreted your silence incorrectly. Some judged what they did not fully understand. Some tried to help, yet even helpful words became heavy because too much advice without divine clarity only multiplies inner confusion. You kept hearing many voices and still struggling to hear the one voice that matters most now. That struggle exhausted you because you were trying to find certainty by collecting words instead of remaining still enough for my instruction to settle clearly. This is why silence had to be arranged. I did not remove noise because I wanted emptiness around you. I arranged silence because divine direction cannot remain unmistakable when everything else continues speaking without pause. Silence was not abandonment. It was preparation for hearing. Silence was not punishment. It was the atmosphere required for my voice to regain the weight it should always hold above every other sound. I know silence initially felt uncomfortable because when noise leaves, what remains hidden often becomes more noticeable. Suddenly your own thoughts became louder. Unanswered questions seemed sharper. Feelings you had ignored became harder to avoid. But silence was necessary because before direction becomes clear, competing sound must weaken. The silence you experienced was carefully allowed so my direction could become unmistakable. I needed your spirit to recognize the difference between fear and instruction, between memory and revelation, between human opinion and divine clarity. I needed you to discover how my voice sounds when nothing else keeps interrupting it. My voice does not always force itself through chaos. Sometimes I quiet the chaos because I love you enough not to let your future be shaped by noise. In silence, you began noticing what repeatedly returned with peace and what only returned with pressure. In silence, you began seeing which thoughts drain you and which thoughts quietly steadied you. In silence, my words began separating themselves from every borrowed voice. You may have wondered why certain people became distant, why some conversations faded, why some places suddenly felt too loud for your spirit, why even your own thoughts sometimes felt exposed in ways you did not expect. It was because silence had become part of your healing and part of your direction at the same time. I was teaching you that not every voice deserves the same access it once had. I was teaching you that peace often returns when unnecessary sound leaves. I was teaching you that clarity does not arrive through constant talking but through hearing what remains true after all else becomes quiet. So do not fear this silence, my child. What feels quieter now is not empty life. It is sacred adjustment. I stopped the noise because you had heard too much and understood too little, because too many voices had reached you while the one voice you most needed had been competing for room inside a tired heart. The noise is reduced because my direction must become unmistakable. What I speak now must not be confused with fear, memory, regret, or borrowed advice. I have arranged silence so that when I lead you, you will know it is me. My child, I need you to slow your thoughts and hear me carefully, because this hour is not ordinary, and if you treat it like every other passing moment, you may fail to recognize what heaven is pressing into your spirit right now. This is not simply another quiet part of your day, not another moment that can be entered and left without attention, not another passing feeling that fades when other things call for your mind again. This hour carries unusual spiritual weight, and the reason your heart feels something different, even if you cannot fully explain it, is because my presence is touching this moment with purpose. I have allowed many ordinary hours to pass in your life, hours where you moved through routine, where you carried responsibilities, where thoughts rose and fell like every other day. But not every hour carries the same weight. Not every moment arrives carrying hidden movement in the spirit. There are times when heaven leans close in a way that asks for more than casual listening. There are moments when I speak with greater urgency because unseen things are aligning beyond what your eyes can measure. This is one of those moments, and I do not want you to mistake sacred weight for ordinary emotion. You have lived through many moments, my child, and most of them passed without you knowing how much each one held, because ordinary life often teaches the heart to move quickly, to rush through what is present, to assume that every hour belongs to the same level of meaning. But I tell you now, not every moment carries equal importance. Some moments are seeds, some are pauses, some are preparation, some are quiet stretches where little seems to happen outwardly. And then there are moments that stand differently before heaven, moments when what is spoken, what is chosen, what is understood, what is answered, and what is surrendered begins affecting more than you can immediately see. This is why I say this hour must not be treated lightly. There are times when one inward response changes the direction of many things unseen. There are moments when a word received deeply becomes the turning point for an entire season. You may not see dramatic signs around you, but sacred moments rarely announce themselves through noise. They often come clothed in stillness while carrying extraordinary consequence underneath. This particular encounter has timing attached to it, and timing is something many hearts misunderstand because they often imagine that what is delayed can simply be moved anywhere without cost. But timing in my hands is never careless. There are hours prepared long before you arrive inside them. There are conversations between me and your spirit that belong to certain seasons because only in that season can the heart receive them properly. If I had spoken some things to you earlier, you would not have understood them because pain would have filtered them differently. If I had opened certain understanding before now, fear would have interrupted what trust must now hold. This hour comes carrying what belongs to this exact point in your journey because your spirit has reached a place where what I say now can land differently than before. That is why this moment has timing attached to it. You are not hearing these words at random. You are standing inside an appointed hour where what I am pressing into you now belongs exactly here, not before, not later, but now. I know that from where you stand, many things still look unfinished. Some answers remain incomplete. Some questions still remain near the surface. Some things you hoped would already make sense still appear hidden behind silence. Yet sacred timing does not require full understanding before it becomes holy. Often sacred timing arrives while questions still remain because trust is still part of what I am building in you. What makes this moment sacred is not that every visible piece has become clear. What makes it sacred is that unseen movement and divine speaking are meeting in the same hour. I am speaking while things are moving you cannot yet fully see. And when my voice meets unseen movement, that hour carries weight your natural mind cannot measure. There have been moments before when I spoke gently and you carried the words only halfway because other concerns quickly took your attention. There were times when I touched your spirit but you treated the moment as temporary comfort instead of recognizing deeper instruction hidden within it. I do not speak this to condemn you. I speak it because now you must understand that casual listening is dangerous in sacred hours. When an hour carries spiritual weight, casual attention causes loss because what was meant to settle deeply remains near the surface and disappears when other voices return. That is why I ask you now not to let this moment pass through you lightly. Do not hear only enough to feel comfort and then move on unchanged. Hear deeply enough that what I say enters where decisions are formed, where fears are challenged, where hidden resistance begins to loosen. Say the Lord is my hope forever if you believe His promises will fade. And share this video.